The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine, and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Happy 100th, guys. Can you even believe it? We've been doing this 100 times.
God,
this
it
is
seems
crazy.
like a lifetime.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, and thank you for joining us this Wednesday. We're coming to you from Salem, New Hampshire at Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. We have a lovely cake that they gave us, which is awesome.
Isn't that
Scott's
nice?
going to have to help me cut it.
Happy 100th episode, the Quirky Dog.
Not everyone achieves
I
it.
half expected maybe Bridget the Midget might jump out of this little
Oh, my God.
cake.
Don't start talking about strippers. Ironically, though, since he's talking about that, the episode theme today is must love dogs, and that comes from a lot of different places, but we're going to talk about the direction of the podcast, some new things that we're offering, and why must love dogs is the theme here today. But first, we're going to start with the quirky tip.
Hang on. This is my cue.
And our quirky tip, this artist that did the cute cartoon on the very front of our set, it's an Instagram artist, and you can find her at sketchy.annie. So that's SKETCHY.Annie. She's on Instagram, and she does these super affordable cartoons of your dogs and everything else. So I had a little headshot done of Gigi, and she just finished it for us for a 100th quirky tip.
Yeah, it
so
looks cool.
Yeah, we love
Good
it.
job.
And unfortunately, she's doing pretty well, but our little squirt, our little Pomeranian's been having some heart issues, and we just went away for the first time in, what was it, over 3 years?
It's been, quite a while.
Yeah, we went away for the first time in over 3 years without any dogs before. So we've gone on vacation, but dogs come here or there and all this
That being
stuff.
said, congratulations, Stefan and Laura.
That's right.
On their wedding.
Let's show the wedding video now.
Sure.
All right, this is part of the must love dogs situation because some of our dear friends got married down in Austin, and they had their dog be the ring bearer with the nephews. It was the cutest thing ever.
So they had a social Malinois in the wedding party. I mean,
It was so cute.
I was like, my dog couldn't do that.
It was the greatest wedding, but we did keep saying, wow, like the photographers can be in its face, like the kids, everything else. We're launching apparel again. We're doing so many fun things. But let's talk about the podcast first, babe, before we cut into this cake. What are we going to do moving
I think
forward?
we should talk about the podcast
What are you gonna?
now that we're here.
What's our plan? What's our future?
Well, I follow your lead typically, and our marriage has gone very well. And the podcast is doing pretty good, too, when I say, yes, that's a good idea. I agree, honey. That's a good way to go.
When we have come together on this and put our heads together, really, I think our main goal is we just want to help dog owners, and primarily pet dog owners. Sometimes we, go into different professions within the dog industry as far as kennels and daycares and groomers and everything else. But we want everyone out there that owns a dog and you feel like you're ready to pull your hair out and you don't know what to do. We just want to give you some simple direction, because somehow dog training has gotten way more cumbersome and way more complicated and everything else. And sometimes just going back to the basics can provide a lot of benefit to everybody. So we are here to help people who own dogs who want to live more harmoniously with their dogs.
We do have a lot of viewers that are dog trainers, friends that are dog trainers that have come on and listened to us and enjoy watching us on occasion. And but really the podcast is for the regular companion dog owner that may be having some trouble with their dog, may need a little help, having more stress than they need. And I have found, surprisingly, a lot of my in-person clients have been following the podcast.
Yeah,
and
surprisingly, he says.
Well, I don't really push it to the in-person clients, but
Yeah.
they do. When they find out that we have the podcast, they love it, and they watch all the back episodes and all that. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and these stories and stuff that we're delivering to you in real time, we're still out there in the field working with dogs. I think that's one thing that separates Scott and I from some other voices out there. There's a lot of amazing trainers, and they have an amazing background and amazing history, and maybe they're super competitive with their dogs, but they're not necessarily hands-on in the pet dog world day in, day out. And we've been doing that together now for over 10 years, and it's not going to be stopping anytime soon.
Yeah,
So,
I would just like people to not feel guilty about actually using a crate.
Yeah.
And, just using
Little
some dog
things.
training tools and maybe learning how to incorporate some structured feeding and controlling their household a little more rather than being a victim of their dog's behavior and just being really stressed and not knowing what to do and not asserting themselves and feeling like they might make a mistake and all that stuff. You know?
And you can open, the internet and start researching stuff, and you can get answers from every direction. And not that what we say is always going to be the right answer, but we want to give you some practical advice and some advice that's tried and true and works, because we've done these things with multiple breeds and multiple owners and everything else over the year. And we're trying to refine our craft too and be able to deliver the best we can to our in-person clients and our podcast listeners and viewers and everything else. So we're not going anywhere, and must love dogs. Why is that the title of the episode besides the wedding video?
Love them or leave them. That's, I mean, if you're going to have a dog, commit to the dog and then start enjoying the dog. When you're in that limbo state of this dog is a pain in the ass and you're just dealing with it and not really committing, that's when it's really frustrating and hard to deal with.
Yeah, and I think of it in terms of more the relationship stuff too, and that movie and our other very dear friends we saw in Texas. We had a really quick 2-night trip, but we saw a lot of people and got a lot of love. We filled our cups, if you will. My other friend always used to say, Jess, must love dogs. You just have to find someone that just loves dogs just like you. And it's funny because in my headspace, when Scott and I, before we got together, I didn't need to be with someone. Like, I was totally fine never having a spouse, didn't want to have kids, not a big to-do. But my criteria was, I don't want him to screw up my training, or I don't want him to, change my training, you know what I mean, and all this. And
I've done both.
Well, but my point with Scott is that he actually challenges me to be better. So it's not that he's fumbling to undermine my training. He's pushing my training and testing my dogs and being like, oh, you're going to want to recall them? Here's a fresh piece of steak, recall them off of that. So for us, it's really worked out well. And we do love our dogs just more than anything in our lives in a certain way. And we love Scott's kids, and we have family and friends.
It's unhealthy.
But our dogs are the center of our relationship and who we are and everything else. And even going through this stuff with Gigi this week with her heart and being away, it was super stressful. And our dogs they complete us, I would say. And we are very strong in our marriage as is, but our dogs definitely fill the whole cup.
Well, I can't really argue with you. I've been bringing my dogs with me to work, and it's nice to get them out and work them in front of pet dog clients as a distraction for their dog, and it helps my dogs burn off some energy. And they are a big part of our lives, whether we like it or not. There are times when it's frustrating, when we can't go away because we have
too many damn dogs
to deal with and care for. But that being said, I wouldn't trade it, and I wouldn't dump the dogs off at the rescue because I want to go on vacation.
It is something.
I guess some people do that.
It is something to consider, though, from a relationship perspective, because some people grew up and have always had dogs and everything else, and sometimes you get a dog and your partner or your spouse hasn't had one before and it works out great, but. To me, dogs are either a hassle or a haven, depending on who you are and, how you feel and where your values align. And truly, if you want to be in a relationship and you want to have a dog or dogs, it's a similar conversation to having kids, I would say, in a sense. And a lot of our clients now, it's interesting, they're together and before they get married or whatever, they have a dog. They're kind of testing it out. All right, let's do a dog together, see how this goes, see how we vibe. Then they get married, then they have the kids and introduce the kids together. But if both of you are not on the same page in a certain way, I couldn't be with someone that hated my dogs or wanted nothing to do with my dogs. Half the time, I'm always like, if Miss Bug didn't love you, I would never have stayed. And I've had Sync for 10 years, you know what I mean? And we call Jimmy the chew glue. He's in between us, and he's good, and he eases our stress and everything else. So dogs to us are everything, and it doesn't have to be that way in your relationship or in your marriage or in your partnership. But if one person despises the dog, that could be some marital conflict or some relationship conflict. And we see that.
That's for sure.
We see that sometimes where our clients are like, I don't know why we have this damn dog. It's totally a waste of time and space and everything else, and it's just more hassle than it's worth, whereas the other person loves the dog and dotes on the dog. And if you listen to us frequently, when you love your dog, that can be with structure. It's not just feeding them constantly or petting them constantly or holding them in your lap, but making them a part of your lives and making them as well-rounded as they can be, I would say.
Yeah, and sometimes it's, one spouse is working all day, the other's home with the dog. The dog is very difficult. The spouse that's at home wants to get some dog training. The person that comes home from work at the end of the day just wants to spoil the dog and let the dog be on the couch and says, oh, the dog's great, we don't need any training, but they're not living with the dog all day long.
Yeah.
They're out. And So sometimes there can be some conflict about not being on the same page with regard to training. But I always say training is good for the dog regardless of whether or not you feel the dog needs it. The dog will calm down and just feel a little more confident, a little less stressed, knowing there's some rules, knowing there's some boundaries, and having some routines, just like kids and just like us. We all need to know or to have the feeling we know what's going to happen tomorrow, even though we truly don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's nice to know we have a job to go to, and we believe the lights are going to come on when we flick the switch in the morning and all that kind of stuff.
And the dogs, just like us, they don't want to be in control of everything. They need us to kind of balance that out and show them some leadership and everything else. So it is important to note. I mean, if you are in a relationship, and some people will never get dogs, and that's fine, but you learn a lot about people's values and parenting styles and priorities and how they handle responsibility and everything else by owning a dog together. And I mean, Scott and I have multiple dogs. We've raised multiple dogs together. We take care of hundreds of other people's dogs over the years. I mean, we do a lot of stuff together with dogs, and the core of who we are, we love animals. And like we always say, like every living thing, like we got to make sure it's going. We came home from this trip. How are the pot plants? How are the worms? How are all the dogs? And you need to give that kind of value if you're going to be a dog trainer and be in the industry. Like you need to be able to connect on that level. It's not just pumping cash out and getting the numbers and all that. So
and my dogs,
be conscientious of that.
All the dogs I work with, whether they're mine or a client's dogs, they quickly expose my shortcomings and all of the issues that I may have that I have not addressed with being frustrated or, trying my patience and all that stuff. And I'm present enough most days to realize that in the moment when it happens, and realize I gotta work a little more with this, or I gotta back off here if I'm getting frustrated. But it's nice because it's only you and the dog. So if you're getting frustrated, the dog is not intentionally trying to frustrate you. The dog is just being a dog.
The dog's just being a dog.
So if you're getting all worked up over this friggin' dog,
that's a you thing.
Take a look at yourself. Why am I getting so frustrated? And quite often, it's not just the dog. Everything is getting you worked up,
Yeah, and you can learn a lot about yourself through your dogs. Dogs are a great way to self-reflect. Okay, we are going to go.
That's not always a good thing, but
if you want to work on it, it can be a good thing. Yeah. We're going to go to break, and when we get back, we're cutting cake. I'm ready to cut cake.
Does your dog lack self-control? Are you looking for some answers? Would you like your dog to be calmer? Does your dog lack confidence? Canine Mindshift. Enroll in a free course today. Simply go to caninemindshift.com. That's caninemindshift.com.
Okay, we are back, and Scott is going to be the official cake cutter. I'm not allowed to have knives that sharp.
I'm going to use this in the Halloween episode, I think.
Oh my God, I got to tell him. So I don't know if I'll remember to bring it before Halloween, but Jimmy likes to reactively grab a toy. He's very motion sensitive, and when Scott always brings his dogs when he works, and when Scott's at in-homes, Jimmy will sometimes honk the horn, like he's beeping the horn. So we bought him a fleshy, bloody, Halloween arm.
A fake dismembered arm. Yeah.
So when he's out doing in-homes, Jimmy's going to sit in the front seat and hold his arm.
His new retrieve item.
Exactly.
Is a bloody arm.
All right, cut that carefully. We have some fun things in store to launch for the 100th episode. So one thing I did, which was a little more tedious that I bargained for, but I went through and I did a blog post of all 100 quirky tips, and I posted that on my personal Facebook page, the Canine Healing Facebook page, and then we're also linking that in this episode. So often we bring things up, but if you guys are in the car driving and think that might be an item that I'd like to look for, I put live links into everything.
I wish I had a quirky tip.
No, but some of the items, wow, you do a good job with that cake. You could have cut the cake at the wedding. So I went through all of that. It would have been super smart if I Amazon affiliate linked everything, but I didn't. I just gave you guys places to go and websites that can give you more information on everything else. And then the other thing we're doing is we're reopening apparel. So we had apparel last year, and it's going to be open until Halloween, so orders will close Halloween. So our V-neck this year is going to be blue. If you click on the apparel link, you'll see, but it's the same V-neck that we had last year, same material, everything else, and a medium's normally good for me. And then our T-shirts are going to be back as well, but we're doing a mint and a pink instead of the teal and the green.
Oh my God, I love that.
And then rather than the hoodie and the wide neck sweatshirt, we're doing a zip up this year. So, and we have a new logo too. Chrissy's going to put this on the screen so you guys can see. So this is a little bit different. You can have the original logo, or you can have the new Quirky Dog podcast logo. And you can see when you click on the link, you'll have to specify which logo, which shirt, which size, and everything else. So you can start ordering those today. Orders will close on Halloween, and I'll remind you guys throughout this month, and then they'll begin shipping mid-November.
Get your Quirky Dog shirts.
Are we sharing?
If we must.
All right, I can do this.
I was pointing at that plate.
Oh, you wanted your own? How is it, Chrissy? Is it good? Did you have a taste?
Oh, not yet.
We
I was
gave-
saving
We
it.
gave
It looks
Chrissy, our
incredible.
producer, a taste too.
It's a cannabis cake, and
We're in New Hampshire. It is not a cannabis cake. It really does look incredible.
Oh, and by the way, I should have brought that footage of my drying room.
Oh my God, we cut down the
cut
plants.
the plants down Sunday.
My husband.
Oh boy, it's a full room.
We're going to be
Wow.
trimming all our in-person clients. No classes next week. Oh my God, we got a lot of things coming up. This cake is phenomenal. I can't believe that we didn't even share a piece. Here, let's do this since it's the Must Love Dogs episode.
If we were at home, my dog would be eating a piece of cake.
It's good, isn't it? It's really chocolatey. It's super tasty. All right, so let's get back to this wedding and going away and our love and everything else. So
Oh yeah, let's talk about our love. That's
our
first on
love
my
is
list.
I
strong.
wanna know more.
Scott said when we were walking in today, it was very sweet. Oh, we were talking. He's gone from his Hoka shoes to zero shoes for running because that's just how my husband
Now I'm
is.
barefoot running.
And now he's a barefoot runner because he's all about the extremes. So he
I'm gonna
says
be-
on the way in, these zero shoes, it's really nice because they were as good as I expected. Is that what you said?
As good as I hoped they would be.
He said, they're
Just
as good.
like her.
That's what he said. He said, just like you, right before we walked in. I thought that was sweet. But when I was kind of
Got to
putting
build
this,
those points up.
shut up. When I was putting this episode, kind of these thoughts together and everything else, I was thinking we have written a lot about our love of dogs on our blog. And then when I happened to do the 100 quirky tips in our blog, you can just go and look throughout the blog. But I wrote, about 2 years ago now when we lost Bam, about how I felt about Sarge and Bam and how we are connected with that. And Scott did a really nice write-up when we lost Sarge. So our dogs, the way we love our dogs pretty much shines through everything we do. And if you don't know that about us at this point, I can't help you.
Well, I think we all, when our dogs pass, we all realize how much
Yeah,
they
really
filled
matter.
our lives
Yeah.
up, and we take it for granted when they're there every day. But I mean, these dogs, they live for anywhere from 8 to 15 years, and love them or hate them, or you have your good days, bad days, but they're there and they're a part of the family. And when they're gone, there's a big hole in your life.
Yeah, no, you got to be grateful for what
tough.
you have when you have it. And
Unlike a cat, not that I dislike cats. In fact, I want to get a Maine Coon cat, but I'm still working on that one with
why
her.
are they different than cats, since you brought this up?
Cats are more independent. You don't
Yeah.
have that same relationship typically with cats. There are some cats that are dog-like, but most of them are not. They're more wild.
Yeah.
Cats are like
Little
little
more
wild
feral.
animals
Yeah.
that just live in your house.
Little mini tigers.
The best thing they do is poop in a box. I mean, other than that, you don't even need to look at them. Just leave some food out, and they just do their own thing.
Oh my God, this is an amazing cake. We're gonna have to get a little memo for this for our 10-year vow renewal. So tell them about the wedding and how great the Malinois was and how unusual that was.
I was
And-
really impressed, and,
Yeah.
and it goes back to my feeling about, one of my good friends in French Ring, Richie Bonilla, who is a Malinois breeder down in West Palm Beach.
He bred that dog.
He bred this dog.
Yeah.
He's a pretty prolific breeder. He's been breeding for quite some time, but he has often said, and I've heard him say, that if the dogs are social, you don't need to go out of your way to socialize them. And if they're not social, you can socialize the heck out of them, and they're still potentially going to be a dick in social situations, So I've made the mistake, well, I don't know if it's a mistake, but I have always picked puppies that were ideal for the sport that I wanted to work in, and their social aspects were secondary to, were they fast, were they athletic, do they bite well? Those are the priorities. Now, after that, I hope that they're somewhat social, but if they're not, I'll deal with it. And what has happened is, having that mentality, I've had like a solid 15 years, almost 20 years, of having a dog that I cannot have out around people in my house, or I can't let people pet that dog in public because they get a little grumbly.
It's different than our normal
And I've
companion
raised,
animal, like the Border Collies.
I had, the first dog I had was, I've had a couple that were real social, but then they weren't good biters. They weren't great in the sport. But I had intentionally raised this one puppy with my kids and had the dog out in the household a lot. And the dog was great with the kids, great with everything until he matured. And then all of a sudden, that little switch flipped where he got territorial, started getting defensive, started not trusting strangers. And, it's not like it's just hard at that point. You can put a muzzle on them and you can keep getting them in situations. But if that's kind of their temperament, it's kind of hard to change that.
And it is hard with these working dogs, especially when you're getting, like, let's say Belgian Malinois for protection sports. Like, there's certain genetics that you're heading towards and certain, temperaments that maybe, like Scott said, better suited for sport than living. But this dog was so social. It was so nice to see.
And I will back up and just say that Loco, the first dog that bit really well that I competed with, was from Richie, and he was super social.
But he broke somebody's nose at a kennel just saying hi, though.
And broke somebody's leg in the competition.
Biting. So there's a toss-up. He was intense, but
he was a really
loving.
social dog, but if you pushed him, like he was a pretty strong dog. So he would definitely bite the crap out of you if you were going to be unfair with him, which I think is a legitimate, character trait.
Yeah, that a lot of Malinois possess. But this dog, there were photographers in his face, obviously 2 young boys walking down the aisle. And how much more could you love a dog than having a dog at your wedding? And this bride, we were really good friends with the groom, and I've met the bride a few times.
And he was
she's
not
such
really
a
well
sweetie.
trained either.
Oh, shush, he was fine. We were the dog wranglers, so I got a quick one worked up there. But she says to me, I said, are you guys staying at the hotel? And she goes, no, I want to go home and sleep at the house with my babies. And I thought, oh, that's so sweet. It's a perfect match. So congratulations to Stefan and Laura, and Norman did a great job. And happy 100th to us. I'm excited to have the cake.
Stefan got lucky with Laura. Boy, that's all I can say.
We're back to the quirky dog. We're back to the quirky dog. I didn't even bring anything fun. I was actually going to get you Indian bread pudding from the village because I always say the proof is in the pudding, but I didn't have time to go there between getting home and this. So the cake is great, and it's so tasty.
Very nice. And the Indian pudding, really, there would have been a big disconnect there as far as the podcast goes.
That's where Scott always used to go eat when he was little. Well, guys, please click on the 100 Quirky Tips link. You'll see the blog post. It should be pretty easy.
Oh, hang on.
Click on the apparel link.
You wrapping up here? Come on. 100th episode?
Pretty quick. What do you need?
All right.
We're wrapping up.
Do we have a closing tip?
Scott's going to talk less.
Get out and work with your dog a little bit.
Thank you guys for everything. We appreciate your support. We'll see you next week. Happy Wednesday.
See you for another 100.
Keep it quirky.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.